Senator Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Well, we have just heard Senator Madigan's Stop the Planet I Want to Get Off bill. I mean, that's what this is. We have, around the world, wind power being installed at an unheard of level. I used to work at Liddell Power Station, a coal-fired power station, 2,000 megawatt power station, one of the big power stations in Australia. And in 2012 alone, to try and get some understanding of what's happening with wind power, around the world there is 238 gigawatts of wind power installed around the world, about 119 Liddell power stations, a huge investment in wind power all around the world. And if you look at the International Energy Association website and you go to what's targeted for wind power around the world, well, wind power is targeted to pick up 12% of energy needs by 2050. That requires 47 gigawatts of installation of wind power every year for the next 40 years. It's $81 billion a year in investment. Now, Senator Madigan said that this was a billion-dollar industry. Senator Madigan, it's not a billion-dollar industry. It's a trillion-dollar industry. The industry will have to invest $3.2 trillion through to 2050 to meet that 12% of wind energy by 2050. And Senator Madigan throws these words around that the wind energy industry can do whatever it likes. The system allows it to do whatever it likes. Well, Senator Madigan, I didn't see you sleeping through any of the evidence, so you've obviously ignored much of the evidence. You obviously haven't read the evidence from the Queensland Conservative government, who say that they have got stringent regulation in place, that they don't want an industry to operate without any regulation, and that the regulations that are in by the state governments around this country are amongst the most stringent regulations anywhere in the world. Well, I've just got a little bit of an issue with Senator Madigan's approach on this, because I'd like to remind the Senate why we need renewable energy. Because the climate science is in, Senator Madigan. You can't continue to believe that the climate science is not there and that this is some kind of conspiracy by the wind power industry or some group of bankers in Zurich or somewhere. This is a real problem, and it's a problem the world is struggling to deal with. And wind energy is one of the key components to try and deal with this issue of global warming and climate change. Now, I know many senators in this place are either skeptics, deniers, conspiracy theorists, or just political opportunists on this energy. Well, I'll take that interjection by Senator Williams, who said, no, we're just realists. Well, Senator Williams, the realists around the world are people like the World Bank. You know, not some left-wing conspiracy, trying to knock over, and create a world government. They are saying that there are significant problems. There are significant problems. And Senator Williams, let me remind you of the Australian Academy of Science 2010 report. They're being realist. They are the realists on this issue. They put out a report, The Science of Climate Change, Questions and Answers. Go and have a look at it, Senator Williams. Have a look at what it says. And they try to address the confusion created by contradictory information in the public domain. Obviously, Senator Williams, you haven't read it. I remind senators of the 2011 CSIRO report, Climate Change Science and Solutions for Australia. That report draws on the latest peer-reviewed literature contributed by thousands of researchers in Australia and internationally. And it provides a synthesis of CSIRO's long history of public-funded research over several decades. Obviously, Senator Williams, you haven't read that either. It highlights the importance of climate change as a matter of significant environmental concern in Australia, and provides the latest information on international climate change science and the responses. It highlights the importance of climate change as a matter of significant environmental concern in Australia, and provides the latest information on international climate change science and response. But if you want to be a denier, if you want to be a skeptic, if you want to listen to Alan Jones, you won't believe it. You'll say the scientists are wrong. The CSIRO's got it wrong. The Academy of Science has got it wrong. But let me tell you, I would take those bodies before I'd listen to Alan Jones any day, because I'm concerned about the future for my grandkids and the kids that are being born in Australia today. They have to have a future, and part of that future is wind farms. Part of that future is renewable energy. And it's absolutely important that we deal with this on the basis of science and not groups that are running around trying to instill fear in local communities and creating the problems that local communities are feeling because they are out there fear-mongering about wind farms. Now, it's not just the scientists that are worried. The Catholic Church is worried, Senator Madigan. And I would ask you to go and have a look at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences report in 2011. I notice that you're smiling. I'm not sure if you've read that report, Senator Madigan, but I'm sure it would certainly educate you a little bit about what the scientific issues are. And what the Vatican did was bring together a number of the world's most eminent scientists on climate change. And what that report said was that global warming and climate change is a real problem. Icebergs are falling into the sea. Glaciers are retreating. The sea level is rising. And you can sigh, Senator Madigan. You can sigh all you want. But I'll tell you, I would listen to these bodies before I would listen to the Warborough Foundation, who probably wrote your speech for you. I mean, the report from the Pontifical Academy of Science calls on all people and all nations to recognise the serious and potentially irreversible impacts of global warming caused by anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases. Now, Senator Madigan, go down and see your local representative of the Vatican in Australia. Talk to them, get a copy of the report. I'll send you it if you like. But I can tell you they are equally concerned about this as the scientists in Australia. Now, remind senators of the Bureau of Meteorology's State of the Climate 2012 report, which provides an updated summary of long-term climate trends. It notes that long-term warming trends has not changed, with each decade having been warmer than the previous decade since the 1950s, and it goes on and on. And last week, the World Bank released its contribution to this issue in a report called Turn Down the Heat. The report provides a snapshot of recent scientific literature and a new analysis on the impacts and risks that could be associated with a 4 degrees Celsius warming this century. It outlines a range of risks focusing on developing countries and especially the poor. Now, the report describes a number of meteorological record-breaking events, and it goes to England and Wales, the wettest autumn on record since 1766. In Europe, the hottest summer in the last 500 years. England and Wales, May to July, wettest since records began in 1766. Victoria in Australia, heat waves, many station temperature records. Western Russia, the hottest summer since 1500. Pakistan, rainfall records. The Western Amazon, drought, record low level in Rio Negro. And I can go on and on. Yet we still have people who say that global warming and climate change is not real. And I go to those points because, Senator Madigan, I don't believe the issue of wind turbines is the issue with you.
Senator Cameron, I'll remind you to address your comments through the Chair.
So, I apologise, Chair. Through the Chair, my view is that Senator Madigan's position is not about wind turbines. It's not a concern about the people that have got a problem. Underlying it is his fundamental denial that there is a problem with changing climate around the world. I'm convinced of that. So this week, the International Energy Association, in an article for Planet B magazine, discussed how energy efficiency and renewable energy technology will play a vital role in the transition to a secure and sustainable future. Mr. President, even some of the sceptics' views are changing. Ben Cubby wrote a most interesting article in the Sydney Morning Herald on the 31st of July 2012, where he outlined that the prominent sceptic scientist Richard Muller had changed his position. So things are changing, and surely science is starting to actually deal with the issues, and we will hopefully get to a position where most of the senators in this place can believe that there is a problem and it has to be dealt with, and wind power is an important part of dealing with it. Now, the bill before us today, which I've described as the Stop the Planet, I Want to Get Off bill, is actually the Renewable Energy Electricity Act 2000. And it's to give powers to the regulator that ensure that accredited power stations that are wind farms, either in whole or in part, do not create excessive noise. I don't have a problem with that position. All I say to you is that we have got some of the most strict environmental controls on wind farms anywhere in the world. That's the facts. And the controls are subject to state environmental laws. Now, we've currently in Australia got 59 wind farms consisting of 1,345 turbines with 2,480 megawatts of capacity. And the evidence that was given to the committee was that right around the world, I've described how much wind power is installed around the world, that it's only in English-speaking countries where you have this so-called wind turbine syndrome and these problems starting to appear. So I don't think that the Warborough Foundation has actually got enough translators to get the message out around the rest of the world. So, hopefully they don't, because there is not an issue around the world with wind turbines. There is not a problem of this so-called wind farms syndrome anywhere else in the world, but in some areas in Australia, not everywhere where there's wind turbines, in some areas in Canada, and in some areas in the UK. And if you draw the link between the groups that are agitating against wind turbines, the link eventually goes back to the climate change skeptics and the climate change deniers. So there are issues there. I don't for a minute deny that there are people who feel genuine concern about wind turbines appearing in their backyard, especially if their neighbour is getting a financial gain from it and they are getting no gain. I don't for a minute underestimate the problems that individuals feel and that they genuinely feel that the wind turbines are making them sick. But there was no evidence, absolutely no evidence, to link either infrasound or the sound of the wind turbines to the various complaints and illnesses that were brought before the committee. And our conclusion is consistent with every analysis that's been made on this around the world, that we should not simply accept the arguments that there are problems there. We should take a precautionary approach, which the committee has said we should do. We should continue to do the scientific evaluation that Senator Madigan wants. I think that's appropriate, and that's being done. And we should continue to ensure that we can make a contribution to renewable energy through more wind turbines. Now, Senator Madigan spoke about the nocebo effect. Well, we had evidence that the nocebo effect is a well documented part of literature and medical and scientific literature around the world. The National Health and Medical Research Centre has reviewed some of the literature available, and they said that no adverse health effects other than annoyance could be directly correlated with noise from wind turbines. There is a limited and contested published evidence that wind farm noise may be associated with annoyance and sleep disturbance in some individuals, but the causes are not clear, and that's being considered by the NHMCR. Now, the committee was provided with recent research that has been peer-reviewed and accepted for publication by the leading health journal, Health Psychology. That research has not been publicly yet released. But the research comprises a controlled double-blind study in which subjects were exposed to infrasound and sham infrasound. Healthy volunteers, when given information about expected physiological effects of infrasound, reported symptoms which aligned with that information during both exposure to infrasound and sham infrasound. So this is a scientific study that is basically saying, if you tell people this is what will happen to you through this infrasound, which you can't hear and you can't see, you can expect that this might happen to you, people say, yes, I've now got the symptoms. And yet the same people in the scientific study had sham infrasound. There was no infrasound. And they reported the same conditions that they were told to expect. And that's called the nocebo effect. And it is well known. Now, I'm not saying that if you are suffering the nocebo effect, that you should be ignored, that we should simply walk away and say, well, that's bad luck. It's psychological, not physiological. The view is that the wind industry has got a responsibility to deal with this issue, and so they should. But dealing with it is not stopping the world and getting off, as Senator Madigan would want. It's about understanding the importance of the wind industry, understanding the importance of individuals who feel that they have been affected by the wind industry, ensuring that we continue to have strong state-based environmental protections in place, and that we continue to research, we continue to put regulation on the industry as far as is practical, and we ensure that monitoring continues to go on. I just feel that after listening to all the evidence, that when you weigh up the scientific evidence against the anecdotal evidence that we got, we must go with the scientific evidence. But we must also have care and consideration for people who are suffering because of wind turbines. There should be more transparency in the industry, but that should be through an independent auditor, because you cannot provide what's being asked without having a real influence on the cost of power. So I recommend and support the recommendations in the report. I think it's the sensible way to go, and I reject and do not support the Madigan Jennifer.